Hunger Games, Mockingjay, Part 1 of 2 of 3 Hunger Games. The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 is the first film of the two that are wrapping up the Hunger Games trilogy. Because nowadays you gotta take the last book of the adult novels and split them up into two movies, even though that the last book was actually the same length as the first two books. I smell money. Now, while a lot of the adult novels really went that route with the two movie split for the last book, while a lot of the times they can actually add a lot more character development and depth and story to the movies by splitting them in two, sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes they actually just take a lot of detail and a lot of unnecessary story development and story plots, and they just throw it in there, and it doesn't really add anything except time. Really, I mean, sometimes they don't really add shit to the movie except just you looking at the screen and why are they doing this, and who is this person, why are they coming in here? They didn't mean anything at all. So a quick spoiler alert, just in case you guys haven't seen the second one, which was Catching Fire. By the end of that movie, after Katniss had destroyed the arena they were playing in, she was told that her district, District 12, was basically bombed all to shit and just flattened out. The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 takes place a little bit after the second one ends. It begins with Katniss being taken to District 13, which they thought was destroyed, and actually they built this really badass like underground base. They're basically trying to get Katniss on board to be their symbol of the revolution, the Mockingjay, and to try to convince her to come on board with what they got going on, which is basically they're going to start a revolution and an uprising against the Capitol. Now, one of the things I want to say about this movie, it is shorter than the other two. With the first two Hunger Games movies being about 2.5 hours long, this movie is only 2 hours long. And while it really flew by for me, this movie really kept my interest. It kept me glued to the screen. I wanted to know what was going to happen with these characters. I just think with all the interest and everything that this movie had going for it, it was very slow. I was never bored during the movie, but it was very, very slow. Not a lot of things action-wise happened during this movie. And if you're looking to go into this movie to see a bunch of action like the first two movies had, you're going to be pretty disappointed. All this movie really is the survivors from District 12 and District 13 trying to survive and prepare for this uprising that they are starting. And to be honest, a good part of the first half of this movie is, one, trying to convince Katniss to jump on board, and two, it's not a spoiler alert, when she does, it's about them filming a bunch of propaganda commercials, and they want to show Katniss the areas that the Capitol is bombed or harmed, and they want her to get real fired up so she can put that emotion out and make a good commercial to try to get people to come on their side and join the revolution. Now, like I said, this movie is not based on action. With the first two movies having a main plot centered around a big action set piece, which is the Hunger Games, you didn't get that in here. There was no Hunger Games to go and play. There was nothing. There was just getting prepared for this revolution. It's a really story-driven movie. So far, I'm relating the Mockingjay movies to Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven. You got this nice build-up, and it's building you up, and building you up, and building you up, and then finally you get Stairway to Heaven, and it kicks ass. That's what I think about the Mockingjay movies so far. It's also kind of like, part 2 is the actual uprising and the revolution and all this shit's gonna be going on. I take Mockingjay Part 1 as like a behind-the-scenes making-of kind of thing. So if you were to watch a movie and you're wondering how they came to make this awesome movie, and you go to the special features on the DVD or Blu-ray and you watch the making of it, that's what I kind of think that Part 1 is. It's a making of the revolution. Because it's really all about them filming commercials, getting things prepared, seeing their plans, and giving speeches, and preparing more, and giving more speeches, and getting more pissed and filming more commercials. It's very repetitive. And like I said, it's very slow, but it's not boring. Because you're interested in what's going on and what they're actually preparing to do to start this revolution. Now, I'm a fan of the first two Hunger Games. I own both of them. With the second one, I favor a bit more just because they added more character development, there was better story, the games were a little bit better. I liked it as a movie overall a little bit better than the first one. Not knocking the first one saying it was bad, I just liked it a little bit better. Now, with the first movie, you had a director by the name of Gary Ross directing it. Second movie, you brought on Francis Lawrence, who is also back for the Mockingjay movie. Now, I enjoyed Francis Lawrence's previous movie, with him being Constantine, Water for Elephants, and I Am Legend, and then recently Catching Fire. I like him as a director. He's very good. Now, before movies, Francis Lawrence was doing music videos, and I think that actually kind of helped him behind the camera, because in music videos, you're not getting a lot of jumpy, the craziness behind the camera. I think he's a very smooth director. He's just, the camera kind of glides, and I like that. It doesn't jump all around the place, it doesn't fly and all this other shit. It's very centered and smooth, and you get good shots, and there wasn't any bad shots in this movie. Everything was very comprehensible. Now, another thing that's positive about this movie is the acting, and I thought the acting in this movie was pretty good for the most part. Seeing as how everybody is returning from the first two movies, and also they're being mixed with some new cast members, and I'll get to that in a second. Although with his unfortunate death earlier this year, Philip Seymour Hoffman still managed to film the majority of his scenes for these two Mockingjay movies. When Philip Seymour Hoffman was introduced in the second movie, I really liked his character. He was very cool. I mean, although he was in the second movie for, I want to say, about 20 minutes, he demonstrated a very mysterious vibe to his character, and you didn't know what he was about, what kind of character he was. In this movie, Philip Seymour Hoffman didn't really bring that same vibe from the last movie to this one. He did do a good job in the movie, and I thought Philip Seymour Hoffman was a great addition to the Hunger Games movies. It's just, I liked him a little bit better in the second than I did this movie. Now, for a new addition to the movie is Julianne Moore, and she plays the president of District 13. Julianne Moore is a very good actress, and she was good in this movie for what she was brought on to do. And she wasn't really brought on to do much except direct people around and give speeches. Now, since the original movie, one of my favorite characters from the Hunger Games movies was Haymitch, and that was Woody Harrelson's character. With the Hunger Games Mockingjay having a darker tone, there was a bit more comedy in this movie than the first two. Woody Harrelson brought some really good comedic parts to this movie, and I thought it was really, really cool. Jennifer Lawrence is an actress. She's very good. And I've liked her in the movies that she's done, especially Silver Linings Playbook and American Hustle. She's brought in some really great performances. In The Hunger Games, she was very good as Katniss Everdeen. I liked her in those movies. I liked her character to an extent. I just didn't get as emotionally attached to her character as some other people did. Basically, if you liked Katniss in the first two movies and you loved her character and you loved the way Jennifer Lawrence did it, expect the same thing out of this movie, because she gives the same performance that she's given in the past two movies. She doesn't get any deeper emotionally than she did in the previous two movies either. Now, as far as characters go, they bring on quite a few new characters for you to go along with. And with this movie being half an hour shorter, it doesn't really give you much time to get invested with every new character. If you thought that the past movies didn't really give you enough character development for the main characters, it doesn't really amplify it in here. You don't get more character development from any of the previous characters, and you don't really get that much development from any of the new characters. So it's not a movie that centers on character development. I'm hoping they may focus on that a little bit more with the second movie. I want to say that the last 25 to 30 minutes of the movie were very intense, and it built you up to like this big moment, and then it cut you off. Now, like I said, I'm not a fan with seeing the movie twice in the theater. I'd rather have them take both parts of what they wanted to release separately, cram them together, chop some stuff up, make it a 3-hour movie, and let it be done. Just picture this. The Titanic, back in 1997, you're at the part before they hit the iceberg, and the captain's looking at his binoculars. Oh no. What's going on? It's an iceberg. And then the movie ends. How fucked up would that be? And then you have to wait a year to see the fucking ship sink. You know, in the second part of the Hunger Games, there's going to be this big revolution. You have to wait a year to see the shit happen. I just want to see it now. Overall, I want to say that The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 was a very good movie and a very good addition to the Hunger Games franchise. I like where they're going with it. It kept me interested in what was going on. There wasn't really any action. This movie is basically just a making of the revolution. There's actually a scene in the movie where they premiered Katniss's propaganda trailer that they made, and it was basically her walking on rubble talking about how they're going to kick the Capitol's ass, they're coming for President Snow, and then the Mockingjay came up. It was funny because I looked over to my girlfriend and I said, hey, that's the trailer for Mockingjay Part 2. I was kidding, but at the same time, I'm like, that's most likely what part 2 is going to be about, them tearing shit up. So if you're a fan of the other Hunger Games movies, I would recommend seeing this movie. I think this movie needs to be seen, especially if you're going to want a conclusion. Be prepared, though. This movie is slow. It may not be for everybody if you're expecting what the first 2 gave you, but it does give you storyline to propel you to the eventual part 2. Because if you're already invested in Katniss and all the other characters in the movie, you're going to be invested in this. You're going to go along with the story, and you're going to go see part 2 next year. So for the Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1, I'm going to give it an EQ review of 3.5 stars.